Alrighty. Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's Lunch and Learn virtual discussion. My name is Mads. I'm the Artisans and Programs Coordinator here at Craft Lake City. Today, we are here to discuss the newest Local Voices installation, 50 Years of Healing and Community, in partnership with the Rape Recovery Center, honoring their 50th year anniversary. We've got a really great discussion with a couple of the RRC team members, moderated by one of our Craft Lake City Teamsters. So let's go ahead and get into it. We've got a couple of kind of technical notes. First, we ask that everybody keep their microphones muted during this discussion so that we can kind of allow the free flow of discussion with our speakers. If you're needing captions for this event, you can turn those on at the bottom of the screen using the live transcripts button. This is an engaging discussion. We'd love to hear your questions. There is going to be time for a Q&A at the end of the presentation. Please put those questions into the chat. I'll be moderating the chat throughout the event, and we'll have time to address those questions at the end. And then we do ask that you fill out a brief feedback survey at the end of our event as well. We love to hear feedback from our attendees of our events, just so that we can improve our programming and cater our programs to the needs of the community. So I'll be posting that link in the chat as well. I'd love to kick things off with just a brief introduction to Craft Lake City as an organization. So our mission is to educate, promote, and inspire local artisans while elevating the creative culture of the Utah arts community through science, technology, and art. And we enact that mission throughout the community in a number of ways. I think the kind of biggest and most well-known way that we enact that mission is through our events. The largest of which is the DIY Festival, which is coming up in August, on the second week of August. That festival we host out at the Utah State Fair Park. This year it's going to be on August 9th, 10th, and 11th. It's Utah's largest locals only, local-centric makers market and festival. And then our other events include this year's the 6th annual holiday market, which we host up in Ogden at the beautiful and historic Union Station building. That'll be the first weekend of December on the 6th and 7th this year up in Ogden. And then the newest event to our lineup of annual events is the annual Craft Lake City Letter West, a celebration of hand lettering that we host in conjunction with Midvale, Maine Arts and Culture District. So look out for that really exciting conference in March of 2025. Additionally, throughout the year, we do craft workshops in partnership with a number of different local partners. These are 2-hour workshops where you can learn a different artistic medium. We partner with a handful of different venues throughout the community and offer classes such as empanada making, relief print making, watercolor painting, perfume mixology. You can keep an eye on our workshops. We good to go to the next slide. My Wi-Fi might be lagging, sorry. A couple of other ways that we enact our mission throughout the community are through some of our year-round programs. We have a really wonderful youth artisan entrepreneur program, bringing arts education to local schools, providing crafts and encouraging them to learn entrepreneurship and enact that at the DIY Festival during Kid Row. We also host booths for outreach and activities at different local events, including our tattoo parlors, where we invite local artisans to do Sharpie tattoos, which is a really fun program. And then our program that we're discussing today, which includes Celebration of the Hand and Local Voices. Celebration of the Hand inviting artisans to showcase their art on the streets of downtown, and Local Voices, where we partner with organizations, mission-driven organizations such as the Rape Recovery Center, to bring their important mission-driven messaging to the streets of downtown. So that's a little bit about us here at Craft Lake City. Thank you again for being here for this discussion. And with that, I will kick it over to today's speakers. We have our very own Artisan and Programs Manager here at Craft Lake City, Tiana Young, moderating our discussion. So I'll hand it off to her to kick off this discussion.
Thank you, Mads. Yeah, it's an honor to be here, amplifying the voices of such a mission-driven organization that spreads such important messaging to the community of Utah. But before we dive in, I'd love to give you all an opportunity first to introduce yourself as well as your role within the Rape Recovery Center. So to kick it off, I'm going to turn it over to Sonya for introductions.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sonya Martinez-Ortiz, the Executive Director of the Rape Recovery Center. I've been at the organization since 2020, so I actually started leading the organization at the beginning of the pandemic. I have a background in nonprofit management as well as being a trauma therapist.
I am Nicole Munson. I'm a board member. I will hit being on the board for about a year coming this early summer. I am coming from American Express, where they connected me to Sonya. And I just feel a lot of passion towards the Rape Recovery's mission and the good work that we're doing.
Hi, everyone. My name is Miriam, she, her pronouns. I'm the marketing and outreach specialist at the Rape Recovery Center. And I actually started last year, so it's been a couple of months, I think 6 or 7 now. Excited to be here and talk a little bit more about the artwork.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. It's a pleasure to meet you and be here with you to speak on such important topics. Sonya, obviously you've been around for 50 years, but where did the name of the installation come from? What's the significance of the word choice and how it relates to the messages spread through the placats?
Yeah, so 2024, we are celebrating our 50th anniversary. The organization was founded by a group of volunteers in 1974. And, really the theme for this year, but also just the work that the Rape Recovery does and engages in, is really about, it's twofold. It's supporting survivors in their healing journey, and it's also working as a community to end sexual violence, to create a community where sexual violence no longer exists. And so really the title of that is honoring the fact that we've been around for 50 years, focusing on healing and also recognizing that healing happens in the community and that this is sort of a collective endeavor. It's not just the role of the Rape Recovery Center.
Yeah, wow. That's really interesting too, like being founded by a group of volunteers and being passionate about such a cause. I did want to touch on, just out of curiosity, what exactly does type of programming and what exactly does the Rape Recovery Center do?
Yeah, so as you can see from this first one, and I'll let Miriam talk about the art itself, but our mission is to support and empower survivors and to educate the community about the cause, impact, and prevention of sexual violence. And the way that we do that is through crisis intervention, including hospital response. So we accompany survivors to the hospital after a forensic exam. We provide crisis intervention, advocacy, support, and referral services through our in-house advocacy team. That also includes some short-term case management. Our in-house therapy team works towards working with survivors on healing from the trauma, utilizing trauma-informed practices and modalities. And then we have an entire arm of our organization, which is our community engagement department, that's 100% dedicated to having conversations, really talking about what sexual violence is, what the Rape Recovery Center does, and then engaging with folks from all age groups around how we can create a safer environment and prevent sexual violence from happening in the first place.
And I can add to that, with the image, we made this for our holiday giving campaign, and just representing the RRC, adding the gate, because we're known for the gate, and showing that there's a light always on here at the RRC. An advocate is always available. So that was the meaning behind the image and how it connects to our mission.
And then I just want to add, if you've ever seen our building or our healing garden, which is towards the south side, which Miriam was referring to, this is pretty kind of iconic to folks who have visited or walked by our office. We're currently in Sugar House. And so this is as close to representation. Like if you've been there, you've seen the building, you identify pretty quickly that that's the RRC's building.
Wow, I mean, how impactful is that to have like such an image that like really represents that community, that space that you're trying to foster. So it really, like, even looking at it now, it kind of feels like you enter in there and it's like a protected home. And I want to ask Miriam, I know you spoke a little bit about the design and what kind of influenced that, but how does that relate to the phrasing of life?
Sorry, would you mind repeating your question?
Absolutely. Wi-Fi, I'm guessing. Yeah, so I was kind of just touching on like the imagery of this like kind of stronghold for and how it like feels like a protected home, like even just the way it's conveyed through imagery. And I wanted to ask you as the designer, how specifically, I know you kind of touched on it, but how specifically does that image relate to like the big phrase in bold of "a light is always on"? Would you be able to tell me a little bit more about the significance behind that?
Yeah, so I heard up to the bold. It's cutting off on my side, but yeah, the significance of the image itself. Like for me, I want this image to be to represent the RC as approachable, a safe space for people. So adding like the colors and just having that light there, and feeling like anyone can come and receive services here at the Rape Recovery Center, and assuring that people feel supported and that we're here to help them on their journey. I don't know if that touches what you're asking.
It does, yes. And yeah, I was asking about how it relates to the phrase "a light is always on," and you kind of did touch on that when talking about how you wanted it to be approachable, kind of like that that phrasing of like the light is on, you can come home type of like feeling. That was a misinterpretation, but that kind of based on dating, is that correct?
Yes. I sorry, you're still a little lagging, but yes.
I apologize on my end. It's probably a mixture of both.
Yeah, no worries.
And I can also add, Tiana, that one of our, well, at any point, anybody can call our number. And if one of our advocates aren't answering, we automatically refer to the statewide, like we'll do a rollover to the statewide helpline. So at any point, somebody can talk to an advocate 24 hours a day. But in particular, our hospital response team, our mobile response team, is on call 24/7. So if someone has been assaulted recently, they can go to any hospital. We primarily focus on Salt Lake and Tooele counties, so they can visit any hospital in Salt Lake or Tooele County at any time, any day, 365 days a year. and one of our advocates will be dispatched out to the hospital. So it's kind of a twofold
Wow.
message, both about the actual like physical space as well as the fact that our advocacy services are available 24 hours a day.
What a beautiful message. And, how important of a resource that is, kind of both of those things within one image. So thank you so much for speaking on that. Is there anything else that you wanted to add on to this beautiful slide? Awesome. So for the second plakat, Sonya. So could you tell me a little bit about the image and the significance behind it? Yeah, I'll just pass it off to you.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess a little bit of preface is that we often will actually commission local artists to actually create artwork for us. This particular image was created by Isabella Morillo, and this was commissioned in 2021. And so oftentimes during Sexual Assault Awareness Month, which is in April, or even other times of the year, we will commission local artists to create art for different campaigns that we're doing. They often end up on stickers. So one thing that a lot of people know about us in terms of our outreach is we usually always have really cool, artful stickers that send the message of supporting survivors of ending sexual violence. This particular image, there's a lot of interpretations that you can take from the image of the actual image of the lips, which is related to a voice, right? And whether it's being a voice for survivors and the cause, or whether that survivors feeling like they have a voice and they can own their voice. There's just so many things that you can take from that. And what we often tell folks is that the first thing that you can do when somebody has reported to you, has disclosed to you that they've been assaulted, is you start by believing. And so this is a really important first step for everybody, is to start by believing. And so this image of the lips and the mouth is like a survivor is speaking their truth. They're disclosing, they're maybe seeking out support, and really what we need to do is center believing them before anything else. We also added statistics to this specific plakat because it is just so pervasive. These are the stats for Utah. And so what this tells us is that all of us know someone in our circle, probably more than one person in our circle, who has been assaulted. We are all impacted by it. And we often don't talk about the way that the trans community, and that the way that men are impacted, male identified survivors are impacted. So the numbers are high for all three groups. And this plakat is really meant to get people to stop and look at it and think about it. And so that's kind of some of the insight I can give, as I'm not the original artist of one of the pieces of the image. That's why we chose to include this one.
Thank you so much for kind of diving in and deconstructing the meaning behind all of that. And one follow-up question I had for you regarding the statistic is there work that Rape Recovery Center does to help lower the stat?
Yeah, so something we tell folks all the time is that the earlier we can start talking about healthy relationships and consent, the better. Meaning this isn't just a conversation about intimate relationships or even just sex and sexuality. This is about how we engage in relationships with each other. It starts at our tables, our kitchen tables. It starts in carpools. It's how do we teach our children to, play and respect each other's boundaries, and also for us as adults to respect the boundaries of children. And so some of the work that we do is around the awareness and having these conversations like what we're having today. And then also our team of prevention education staff go into junior high and high schools. We go onto college campuses. We have a partnership with a fraternity, actually, who's one of our biggest partners, Beta Theta Pi, which is also they're receiving an award from us for their 10 years in relationship. So we really work on prevention efforts from junior high all the way up to the end of the lifespan, because we do believe that it is a conversation that needs to start, but then more specifically, being able to provide people with the tools to reduce, whether or not they're engaging, they're engaging in bystander intervention, whether or not that they're decreasing their likelihood of being involved in violence. So we have a wide range of prevention services and programming that we provide to the community.
Wow, yeah, that goes to show just how important like education and just having these like discussions really is for the community, not only like when it comes to education, but also comfort level and just like talking about the reality, right? Like it's hard to address something when it hasn't been, you know, vocalized, right? It's a little kind of like that like imaginary or like the hidden like thing that you refer to, but like the second you start talking about it, you actually are able to, you know, make a difference and act on it. And like you said, have some of those prevention, use some of those prevention techniques. That's really beautiful. So I did want to touch on, like, I love how you connected the art, like the art aspect and commissioning artists with this message. One, obviously with Craft Lake City, like one of the things that we stand for is like uplifting artists. So you kind of do both, right? Just kind of like two communities being held in that. Would you speak to, I guess, the like not necessarily the process, but kind of like the reasoning behind partnering with local artists to spread this type of messaging?
Well, I actually really love that you asked that question, because I was like, oh, I kind of missed a point that really explains that, as well as why we even chose to step into partnering with you all on this, which is that healing arts is actually a really critical component of the healing process at the Rape Recovery Center. So we actually include the healing arts throughout our programming, because we know that it has an impact on the nervous system. We know that we know that healing is in the collective, and we know that art is also a way that we create like collective community around conversations, around ideas, around topics, around things that we really need to work on as a community. And so it's actually just, it's embedded in the organization even prior to me being here as executive director. And so I think it's just important to note that the healing arts is actually a component of what we do. And it's like, we have a very strong belief in the arts as a mechanism for healing. So healing at the individual and community level. And so by uplifting and supporting local artists, our message is able to make, it's able to go further.
Yeah, definitely. And is there any other way that you partner with artists other than like, say, for example, the stickers? Or do you have any like workshops or programming that people could get involved in?
Yeah, so we do at least once a year, sometimes twice a year, we do a healing arts group, which is co-facilitated by one of our therapists and a local artist, Emily Bagley. And so that is an actual group for survivors to join, and they work together to create that curriculum and engage survivors in the healing process. We also usually during Sexual Assault Awareness Month will hold a one-day workshop during SAM that's open to our clients. That's also co-facilitated by a local artist and either someone on our advocacy or clinical or community engagement team. And then in addition to that, we partner currently with tattoo shops. The partnership that we currently have is with Only Forever. So that's Ashley Love is the owner. And she does a flash tattoo event every year where her team of artists will actually donate their time, and they'll do flash tattoos in exchange for donations to the Rape Recovery Center. And, you know, at some point we would love to continue to model those different things, because I mean, that's just how strongly we believe in like art is such a connector, and it's such a way for people to engage in the message. and to engage in supporting. So we have, you know, literally these walking examples of what it means to really engage with our mission.
I would also like to add that, like for
Oh,
me, I being an artist myself, can you hear me? Okay, I'd like to add that for me, like being an artist myself, I really love when I create artwork, I love seeing the interpretation people take from that artwork. Like when Sonya was describing this image of believing survivors, express or showing that, portraying the mouth and that symbolizing having a voice. But also people can see this image in many different ways. It could be maybe mountains or pathways that lead to having that voice, like the different journeys that individuals take for their healing. So I just wanted to share that. Yeah, big part is interpretation of artwork.
Yeah, thank you, Miriam. That's a really beautiful thing that I didn't even consider so thank you so much for chiming in there. And did you have any personal I guess experiences in creating artwork relating back to kind of what you said and how people interpret it, how not how they need, but how they are receptive to, I guess.
Yeah, sometimes when I'm creating an artwork, I created to represent like my own journeys. And people have come up to me to let me know if my intention was the way that they interpreted the image. And I describe like my story or whatever my intentions were behind the image. And just connecting the two different interpretations, that's where I'm able to find that interest that like the interpretation people take, there could be many different ways that people take that interpretation and connect it to their own lives and their journey.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Sonya, I have one more question for you, or Miriam, if you know as well. You had touched a little bit on that you do a workshop during Sexual Awareness Month, which I believe is April. How do people sign up for the workshop? How do they engage?
Yeah, so I think probably the easiest thing for folks is to go to our website and look at our calendar of events. Sometimes they're either full or they're already closed off, but there's always something for everybody. And so I encourage folks to take a look at our website and also reach out to us via phone. And I always end up giving the wrong phone number. It's 801. Let me pull it up. Sorry, now I'm getting distracted. So our website is raperecoverycenter.org. You can see it here on this image. And Miriam, do you have the phone number in front of you? We're in like virtual land era, and oh, T. our community engagement director, is always saving the day for me. 801-467-7282. So anybody who's currently online, you can also take a look in the chat, and T. has copied our website and our direct line.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. Was there anything else that you wanted to touch on before we move on to the next plakat? Awesome. All right, so plakat number 3. Wanted to open this up to Miriam as the designer to speak a little bit on your piece here, imagery as well as the content.
Yes, I could talk about this. So this one was for Sexual Assault Awareness Month, SAM, and actually Stephanie, the associate director for RRC, reached out to me back then, and this was before I started working at the RRC, and it was to create an artwork based on the theme of I Ask, Yo Pregunto, that focused on consent. And so, like I was talking in the last slide about interpretation, for me, it was a little difficult to think about how I would represent consent. So for this image, It embodies different identities and represents the different voices. So if y'all can see on the shirt, it represents support, voice, having a voice, love for one another, understanding, respect, and empowerment, which all connects to consent. And so that was my interpretation of this, but maybe people would take like the colors to symbolize the diversity that also connects to the different identities. Do you have anything you'd like to add, Sonya or Nicole?
I just, in terms of the block letters, this was added, so this wasn't originally part of the original art piece, but it was added particularly for this because of the stigma around consent, and even a little bit as I was talking earlier, which is like often when we think about consent, we think about intimate relationships and we think about adults. And as Miriam's artwork here expresses, that consent really starts at a young age. This consent is about healthy relationships. It's a normal thing to talk about. It's a normal thing to expect, and it's actually essential for nonviolent communities. And so I just wanted to add that in terms of being really bold about the fact that this is about consent. This image is about consent, and hopefully make people think about consent differently.
I'll echo that. I think the biggest thing about consent is it should really start, like what Sonia's saying, at the age you can start actually vocalizing. Like from your very beginning, you should not have to do something that you don't feel comfortable with. And the sooner that we get to feeling like we have power over our own body, then the better as a society will become, because our body really is ours and we make that choice. No one else can make that choice but us.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Thank you so much for diving a little bit deeper into the meaning behind consent is healthy, normal, and essential. I think that's really important messaging that, as you guys said, needs to be talked about. So I did have a question for you, Miriam. Um, you, you mentioned that you began you made this art piece in the
I'm sorry, did you say medium?
Yes, I did.
And then, yeah, it lagged and then you got muted halfway.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, let me just go ahead and repeat the question. I was asking, so you mentioned that you had designed this image prior to joining the organization. And I was wondering if this commission work had any part to play in you deciding to join the organization, and if so, how?
So creating artwork for me, it's important to create and share representation of voices that aren't often heard or seen. So a big part of that, just promoting social justice within my artwork. I think that connected me to the RRC because I wanted to continue my own like values and beliefs of continuing that. And I felt that being at the RRC and being able to create artwork for the RRC, I was able to continue that and sharing voices of survivors and empowering those voices and sharing stories, even if it's not through words, it could be through images, and people are able to connect to that and say, I can see myself in that image. So that was something big. And that's how I was connected and why I wanted to be in this role at the RRC.
That is so powerful. And that really is reflected in this beautiful image that you created. Personally, I resonate with the rainbow around it. It makes me, it feels like hope almost, in that there's like brightness. And yeah, was that any, like from a design perspective, you kind of touched on that. And I was wondering if that was any part of like the intention behind like choosing rainbow, or was it more like you had kind of touched on to represent kind of, the full spectrum of people?
Actually, the colors, I think that was the theme of the Sexual Assault Awareness Month that year. And so I guess embraced the colors and decided to just represent, different identities, how I said. But there's like I said, different interpretations. So, and thank you for sharing your interpretation of what that means to you. But yeah, it's just using the different tools that I had and being able to bring that into the artwork.
It's fascinating, and I love how we kind of just illustrated exactly what you had mentioned a little bit earlier. So thank you for putting this together. One more question on this plakat from me, at least. I noticed in doing some research that one thing that makes RRC really stand out is having all like bilingual resources. Would you, either Miriam, Sonya, or Nicole, be able to tell me a little bit about how you were able to identify that need, and also how long you've been offering that resource?
Well, I'm happy to start with part of that, but I would actually love to really hear from Nicole and Miriam, kind of like they've come on to the organization at different times and like what they think about that. But in doing some archival research, our development director, Flores Olivo, and our associate director, Stephanie Murguia, have been doing some research in the archives. As I mentioned, we're 50 years old. And we actually found in the archives at the University of Utah a brochure, a Spanish-English brochure from 1975 or 76. So the RRC has actually been engaging in multilingual services probably from the outset of its existence. It's sometimes it's hard because when you're around for a while as an organization, you don't always have all of that information. And then what I can say is when Stephanie Murguia came on to the organization several years ago, the organization had really made an effort to focus its work in terms of its like outreach and its community engagement work around increasing access for folks on the margins, but in particularly starting with the Spanish-speaking population. But since then, we have really invested as an organization in bringing on multilingual staff and volunteers, and also working towards continuing to expand the number of languages that we provide our written materials in. But then also any survivor who comes through our door, we budget for interpreting and translation services as needed. And so it is definitely something that we center as an organization.
I'll jump in because this is one of my favorite parts about the organization. I really feel like when you've gone through anything traumatic at whatever level, you should get to feel comfortable. And while one language may not be your native tongue, you should get to feel like you can speak to someone in a way that's easy, comfortable, and understandable. I think without that, it just adds complexity that hurts the victim. And I think what we really want to do is really help survivors feel like they matter. And I think that the bilingual resources that the Rape Recovery Center does really makes it stand out among other organizations, because it's not just about one language, it's about everyone and meeting the survivor where they're at. Miriam, do you have anything else? But I think that image shows this beautifully.
Definitely. I mean, wow, that's no easy feat too, in being able to provide that kind of those kind of resources. Even in preparing for our festivals, we translate some flyers, and like that's already like kind of a lift. But being able to have not only like translators on deck, but also like having those resources in people's like as much as they can, like their native languages, to be able to understand and have access is a huge deal. And I think that's really something that stands RRC out from a lot of other orgs. So yeah, thank you so much for doing what you're doing. And I think we can, if there's nothing else attached to plakat number 3, I think we can move on to plakat number 4. Awesome. So Nicole, I wanted to direct this plakat to you. Would you be able to tell me a little bit about the messaging here, talking about we're still here? What exactly does that mean in the context of this image?
So I think as we are trying to honor the 50 years, I think it's important to know, I'm always amazed as we work through how many people don't know about our services. And I would love for people to know about the rape recovery services far before any event, far before the mobile response team gets in, so that they know that they can be supported, whether that's through prevention, whether that's through supporting someone that they know, going back to the 1 in 3, that people know that we are still here. We want people to be able to reach out for resources. We want people to get involved. And overall, I think we want people to feel supported in their healing journeys. And I think this plakat really shows that way back when we started in the 70s, we're here today and we have a lot to offer and we want you to get involved.
Yeah, you can even see it here. Like this looks like I believe Sonya and I were talking about this a little bit before we jumped on, but having this piece of newspaper actually come from archives, it's dated 1976. How did you even find this piece of like history almost?
So I'll go back to what Sonya said. This was really like the article itself was found through the great work between Flora and through Stephanie going through the archives, looking through, finding her history. There's been a lot of work from the staff. And it's been honestly amazing as a board member to see a lot of this information come to light of the history of the RRC. Really, I think all of staff has done a great job, Miriam included, really trying to get the history of the RRC out there this year as we honor our 50th. And whether that's going to be through artwork that we show in our campaigns this year from fundraising efforts, artwork at our gala that we're doing this year, you'll really see all of this information that started with really the beginning of the 1970s and just seeing sexual violence to what we've become today through legislation. But yeah, that's a long answer for really digging through the archives is how we found it.
Well, you mentioned you wanted to share a little bit more about the history. What are some major milestones that really stick out to you?
I think the biggest thing when we were going through, Stephanie sent actually a document with like an overview of the 50s to me. And when I was reading through it, the biggest things to me were just the start in second wave feminism, people starting to really recognize rape as not just, people who are hunting in the middle of the night, but women who are experiencing sexual violence at all levels in all places. And I feel like what I've loved to see is over across the 50 years is how we've really adapted and really seen that we should look for supporting people. I was in a meeting with Sonya where she mentioned that it's really the only crime that happens to your body, that it's your body itself is a crime scene. And I think when I look at the history of the RRC, it's really getting people to be able to talk about it, be able to heal about it. And through legislation, through getting more convictions, I think those are the biggest points in our history and just the general change and shift of how we talk about it is the biggest thing that stands out to me.
I'm curious. I'm over here acting like second moderator, Tiana, but Miriam actually just completed a piece that includes 5. It's a 5 set or a set that includes 5 pieces for each decade that goes through some of those milestones. So it's basically a visual timeline. Hopefully we have them physically framed and they'll be at our gala. So we're honoring 50 years this Friday, but hopefully we'll also be able to maybe make them available online. We just have to look because it's obviously large images with a lot of information, but because you spent so much time on it, Miriam, I'm curious from you, some things that also stood out to you.
I think for me, what stood out was just all the different services that were added throughout the years, as well as the rebranding throughout the years. To see, like, as a graphic designer, just seeing how the logo has changed and the different ways that those are created, and I guess like being able to organize all those events was very interesting, and knowing what was important to highlight on those timelines. So I am excited, and like Sonya said, these will be displayed at the gala. So hopefully we could also provide them on our website and people can take a look at those. I think you're muted, Tiana.
I am, thank you. Technology today. I was saying, Sonya, thank you so much for chiming in. I love that you're providing a little teaser of something that people can look forward to seeing at the gala. And it's really interesting to hear Miriam even talk about like things as like seemingly simple as like branding, you know, but it like goes to show like how important that really is in like receptivity and being able to accurately kind of convey what you're here to do. That's wonderful. So while we're still here, I wanted to ask what challenges, so 50 years is a long time, and we kind of talked about how there are a lot of growth opportunities throughout the years to kind of shape where you all are today, but what challenges have you faced in continuing to keep this organization alive, as well as being able to offer support and education to the community? Sonya, or whoever wants to chime in, if you could, you seem like you have something to say.
I'm happy to go, but I also would love to hear Nicole's perspective as a board member as well. I will say that in both like viewing the history and then also in my experience at the organization since 2020, I think some of the significant pieces are the ever-changing, it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, ever-changing attitudes politically and socially around like just what's taboo and not taboo to talk about. I think we found some stuff in the archives where like some of the original founders were like, we better not be here in 50 years. I think it actually said 50 years and we all kind of like, oh, but funding is a big one. It is an ever ongoing challenge. We have the benefit of being able to access crime victim funding, but for a very long time, it was the only source of funding. And for the beginning of the organization's founding, it was 100% volunteer run because there was zero funding for this type of work. And there still continues to be a challenge. Our numbers go up every year. So last fiscal year, we served over 2,000 survivors, providing over 21,000 services. And we also reached about 1.5 million people through our education, awareness, and outreach campaigns. And we just don't have the funding to support the scale at which the problem exists in our community. And those are some of the challenges, but definitely I think changing attitudes and the politics that impact the work. There is this constant ebb and flow, just based on where society is at and, how those conversations are happening in community.
Yeah, I'll jump in as well. I mean, I think any nonprofit is going to say we need more funding. What I would say about the Rape Recovery Center is, to Sonia's point about the politics surrounding it, people can feel sometimes very engaged and then sometimes less engaged. And what I would love personally for people to realize that this is a never changing, regardless of whatever politics that are engaged, there is still sexual violence occurring. There are still people who will need this service. And ideally, we would be able to raise more in funding. I think there are a lot of people that are engaged and a lot of people that are interested. I think getting our mission out there and understanding even more of the work that's being done, like our advocacy, like our MRT or our response teams coming in, I think that's pivotal as a society to continue to heal. And when people see it that way versus any politics around it, I'd hope that they'd be willing to fund more, be willing to see that this is an issue that, to Sonia's point, we wish would go away, but it's not going away. And how can we help is, I think, the biggest issue I see.
Yeah, and how can the public help? What could you tell me a little bit about, like, donations, like how people can go donate or people can get involved in your volunteer program? I know you mentioned that it began with volunteers. So yeah, how can people get involved?
So there's a lot, and feel free, Sonya, to jump in as well on ways to get involved. I think you can get involved either by volunteering. You could reach out to, and anyone on this call would be willing, but also just going to raperecoverycenter.org and be able to find ways to volunteer there. There's ways to donate your time, donate any of your skills that you have. We're happy to help you get involved. In terms of donations, same website, you can go there and donate. There's a lot of our fundraising campaigns you can visit through our social media platforms, through our gala, and not just businesses, but people, anyone who's really engaged in our mission can go to raperecoverycenter.org, which is on this, can go and find ways to get involved.
Awesome, thank you. And we only have about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to continue on to the next slide, unless anyone else has anything to add. Awesome. So you can see this exhibition in downtown Salt Lake City now on view through June 30th, 2024, and it'll be along Broadway or 300 South between West Temple and Main Street. And they'll be displayed in these big 4-foot by 8-foot frames with all the beautiful colors as we had with the images that we just reviewed. And they're highlighted in red on this map here. Awesome. So for the Q&A, I believe we may have a question or two in the chat. Mads, do you see any questions?
Yeah, we have a really great question from Stephanie, who asks, what's next for the Rape Recovery Center?
That's a great question. Miriam had mentioned how branding really stood out to her. So you'll see we all have these backgrounds. So we are soft launching our new brand, actually. So we've just developed a new logo. And really what we're trying to focus on is recentering survivors and recentering the mission, which is about making sure that we're a place where people feel like they can come, and also a place that we can create community and create collective ideas around prevention. Some of the things we've begun to engage in is our work with incarcerated survivors. So we have it's called a PREA specialist, so Prison Rape Elimination Act specialist. Thanks to the work of Representative Angela Romero, Utah is no longer one of 2 states who are not working towards compliance with PREA. So we actually have an arm that is going into the prisons, establishing relationships in the Salt Lake and Tooele County jails, as well as looking at how we can potentially partner with Juvenile Justice Service. There's really a big conversation around the sexual assault to prison pipeline, which is essentially, there are a group of survivors who are impacted by sexual violence who find themselves interacting in the justice system. Also, those who are being assaulted when they're in the justice system, and how we can do that. We have been doing a lot of work around expanding our men and boys engagement, particularly working in immigrant, new American, and refugee communities. We have a program called PAC, which is our Peer Advocacy Council, which is, and by the way, none of this is brand new. It's things that have been done at various levels that we're really putting an emphasis in at the organization, because we really believe that will have a huge impact in terms of preventing sexual violence. And then the biggest thing is we've outgrown our building. And so we are engaging in a feasibility study to determine whether or not the organization is ready to embark on a capital campaign. So we have not formally launched a capital campaign, but we are engaging in those beginning processes because, as I mentioned earlier, the demand for our services continues to increase. Our staff are working hybrid. We're sharing 2 to 3, in some cases 4 people are sharing an office, and we're providing virtual and in-person services. And so we're getting to a point that we're really having to think about that next phase of the organization, which is programmatic, but also physical, like physical space. We talked about how important, our actual physical space and building is in that first plakat. So as you can imagine, for us, it's important to continue to engage. Does the space meet the needs that we have as a community and as an organization? So those are some of the things. Nicole, anything else you want to add from a board perspective in terms of the long-term vision or the next kind of iteration or phase?
Yeah, I mean, I have been to the building, and while I love the images, I also agree that we need some more space. That's probably top of mind for me. From as a board member, I think the biggest thing I'd love to say, I think we have a lot of the right programs in place. It's how do we grow them out? How do we get more of the information out, and how do we really increase fundraising for the Rape Recovery Center? And I think as we build out programs and build out ways to make it more accessible, hopefully we'll be able to do the things that Sonya said. Hopefully we'll be able to get a bigger building so that Sonya and team can really grow the Rape Recovery Center and the work, and really the end goal is to help as many survivors as we can.
Thanks so much. And Mads, is there any other questions in the dropped in the chat?
No other questions in the chat.
Awesome. I just wanted to just bring up one final thing, if just to make sure to address every point. Was there anything that we did not address? And this can go out to like all 3 of you, that does still need to be addressed. Did you you mentioned a gala coming up? When is that? What can people look forward to?
Do you want to talk about that, Nicole?
Sure, yeah. So for the gala, I think the gala's on Friday in downtown Salt Lake, and I think what we are really hoping for is what we were saying in terms of fundraising, to find ways like the gala and our other fundraising campaigns to really increase people getting involved with the Rape Recovery Center. So we'll be hopefully working to help fundraise to help more survivors with our gala on Friday. We, as Sonya mentioned, I think before, we are sold out, which is exciting, but we're happy to have people look through our social media and really see from different events. And if you are interested in a silent auction, we do have a hybrid silent auction that anyone can be engaged, ticket or not.
And we plan to post specifically the links to the silent auction, and to also for people to donate if they're not able to attend the event, they don't already have a ticket for the event. We're going to try to keep our social media posted and updated. I think that's one of the things you'll be working on with one of our other team members, right? And then I just encourage folks to think about how this issue impacts them, and then what does it look like to lean into being a part of the solution, and that we can all start from any place from where our vantage point. Maybe it's, I'm going to start having courageous conversations with people in my circle about consent. I'm going to start by asking the little people in my life permission before I give them a hug. Just thinking about maybe one thing that we can all do. And then for those going from there and thinking about how can I support an organization like the Rape Recovery Center, if it's not the Rape Recovery Center, with time or monetarily. And that's really critical, because I just kind of want to go back to like the purpose for us engaging in this partnership with Craft Lake City is really our belief in healing and being in the collective, and our belief that art is a form of healing, and how folks who have that sort of shared joint mission with Craft Lake City and the Recovery Center, like what does that look like and mean for you in your own personal life? And feel free to reach out to us if you have ideas. Like the tattoo flash, still not asking for it is what it's called, snaffy for short. You know, that came from a tattoo artist to a couple of tattoo artists. It originally originated in New York, came to Utah. It's now international. And that just came from a group of tattoo artists saying they wanted to do something because there was prevalence within their industry, and how could they be part of both the solution and also supporting an organization that supports survivors. So think about that, right? Like folks who are artisans, who are interested in art, are very creative. We're all creative beings, but what does that look like? How can you take your interests and expertise and connect that to the work of ending sexual violence and supporting survivors?
So beautifully said. And as we're coming up on the ending of today's session, I just want to say that it really is an honor for us to partner with you in this installation. And thank you so much for coming to the Lunch and Learn. It has been a personal honor for me to be able to moderate the discussion and engage in these important conversations with you all. And from there, I'm going to pass it off to Mads.
Thank you again to everybody for joining us today. Thank you to our speakers, Tiana, Sonya, Miriam, and Nicole. And thank you to our attendees for tuning into this really wonderful and inspiring discussion. We'd love to give a shout out to our supporters, our year-round funders. Without them, we wouldn't be able to make these programs happen. So thank you so much for your continued support. If you are tuning into this discussion and are affiliated with or involved with a mission-driven organization and are interested in connecting with us for the next Local Voices installation, we would encourage you to reach out to us at info@craftlakecity.com. We would love to hear your story and help support getting your mission out to the streets of downtown Salt Lake. I've dropped the feedback survey into the chat for this discussion. We would love to hear from everybody who's attended. Your feedback is really valuable to us. And thank you again for being here today.